all of our hearts be acceptable unto you this day, our Lord and our Redeemer. Amen. Well, it's a little bit early yet, but some of you made some New Year's resolutions that you'd like to keep to yourself or that you'd like to share with us. I've made some resolutions in that, or one resolution, and probably because I was talking about this, and that's maybe to get to the gym a little bit more often this year than I did the last. I find that if I don't get out to the gym every once in a while, that I pay the price for it. Or you might have, what have you got, Linda?
Emily gave me a Fitbit.
A Fitbit?
For Christmas.
Oh yeah, okay.
And same thing.
You might have to explain to some of the people what a Fitbit is.
Fitbit can do many things. It can count your steps. It can remind you when you need to move, get up there and get going. You can coordinate it to different exercise activities, including swimming laps, stuff like that.
Okay, this is something that you wear on your wrist like a watch.
Yes.
Does it tell you the time?
Certain models can.
Okay. The more advanced models can tell you what time it is.
Exactly.
Okay. A Fitbit.
Yeah.
And you're planning to use that this 2017?
I have been already, except
okay.
We were recharging it this morning. So.
Okay, so you're doing well so far. You have with this New Year's resolution.
No. I need to.
Okay.
I need to increase.
Maybe a New Year's resolution for the rest of us might be to be at church every Sunday, and if you want that to be a resolution, you already got the first week under your belt. That's pretty good. January 1st is often a time that people decide to go on diets as well, especially after Christmas. There was something in a bulletin going back a couple of years back about that. It said, Weight Watchers meet every Tuesday at 7 o'clock. Please go through the large double doors at the side of the church. That was a true thing in the bulletin. I think they didn't realize. At Global Gym, at my gym, January, it's always busy. In fact, I was there with one of the young lads from Freedom Store yesterday. There was hardly anybody in the gym. But January, I told him, I said, next month, in January, it's going to be really, really busy. And yeah, it'll be a little bit like that next January. I overheard some newbie last year said, I don't believe in exercise. If God meant me to touch my toes, he would have put them further up my body. Another said his doctor suggested to him that he run in place. He says, run in place of what? So what is your focus for 2017? Will it be to lose some weight? Will it be to get rid of some bad habit? Often New Year's is the time where people say, I'm going to quit smoking for the year. Maybe that's a habit that you indulge in, that you'd like to give up. That was probably the best thing that I ever quit when I was probably 26 years of age. I quit smoking, smoked through high school and through university, and probably the best thing I did was quit smoking. Especially in light of the fact that my dad died of lung cancer. The good news is that men are starting to decline in terms of their use of cigarettes. But the bad news is that women are starting to increase the use of cigarettes to the point that lung cancer in women has now overtaken the #1 cause of death for women over breast cancer. So maybe your focus is on quitting smoking, maybe it is on losing weight, maybe it's some other thing. Each of us needs to examine our own lives, needs to bring those that are concerns to us to God in 2017. Today, we have on our Bible reading a focus on family and family relationships. Mary and Joseph have misplaced Jesus. So in the course of the last week, last time that we met, Jesus was in the manger. Today, he's 12 years old. That's kind of a rapid succession that sometimes happens, I think. When we look back at our own families, one time they're babes in arms, and the next time they're 12 years old, and the next time they're gone. It's embarrassing to lose track of a child. Happened to us when our middle boy, Sean, was about 9 years of age. I was to go and pick him up after baseball practice. And I got there a little bit late. By the time I got there, all the little kids had been picked up and moved on. And Sean had decided that he was going to walk home himself. Only he walked in exactly the opposite direction from the baseball field to our house. It's embarrassing to have to phone the police and tell them you've lost your son. With the help of police, we located him, I think, about an hour later. So Mary and Joseph in our story were walking home. They had been in the temple in Jerusalem. They'd been celebrating Passover. And they were at the time with a large crowd of people, pilgrims, if you like, making their way back to their various places of residence after celebrating Passover together. So you can imagine this large crowd leaving. Passover's finished, this large crowd leaving. And typically in those days, and we experienced it when we were in Papua New Guinea, typically the men would travel together and the women would travel together. So you've got this large group of men and older boys walking together. And you've got this group of younger boys, as well as walking with the women and younger and older women. And at some point, these younger men leave their mother and join their father in that kind of thing. And again, we saw that. And Tom, I don't know if you experienced that when you were a missionary as well, but that's very typical, especially in developing countries. So I'm assuming that that was the case here, that Mary was walking with a group of her friends, her female friends, thinking that Jesus was with Joseph, and Joseph with the men, thinking that Jesus was with Mary and with her group. At any rate, realizing their mistake, they return to Jerusalem and they go through 3 what must have been very frantic days. I know it was like a very frantic hour looking for my son Sean. They were 3 days before they found Jesus. And it must have been a very frantic 3 days. And there was Jesus. He was discussing theology with the rabbis there, where, again, in the words of Luke, everyone was amazed at his understanding and of his answers. I think Mary was less impressed. Basically, she was saying, what have you been doing? Can you imagine after being separated for all that length of time, and he's there discussing theology. Anyway, she says, what were you doing? What were you thinking? And his response was, did you not know that I must be about my Father's business? Did you not know that I must be about my Father's business? And of course, this is the first time that we have in Scripture Jesus' words. It's also the first time that we have an understanding of how unusual a boy is, 12 years old, having an understanding of his father being other than Joseph. Story about a pastor going to visit the home of Bobby's parents and speaking to little Bobby when he arrives there, and little Bobby's frantically picking up toys from the ground, and the pastor says, did your mom promise you something if you picked up all your toys? And little Bobby answers, says, no sir, she didn't, but she promised me something if I didn't pick up my toys. We're all of us who have had children are a little bit familiar with at least some form of discipline, and I'm assuming that there was some form of discipline that happened even with Jesus. So we listen to and we try to seek an understanding of who Jesus was as a child, and we read in chapter 2 of the book of Luke in verse 40, and the child grew and became strong and filled with wisdom and in favor with God. And that's all that we hear about the younger years of Jesus. For his teen years, a little bit further on afterwards, after this story, verse 51, and Jesus increased in wisdom and stature and in favor with both God and with men. Those years can be hard years. Those growing up years. Somebody once said about childhood is a time of rapid change. Between the ages of 12 and 17, a parent can age 30 years. In those days, the accent might be on youth, but the stress is on parents. And this last one, sound travels slowly. Sometimes the things you say when your kids are teenagers don't reach them until they're in their 40s. Some of you have experienced that, I'm sure. Some of you are still waiting for them to hear those words. Well, regardless, again, of how frustrating those 3 days must have been, the story has a happy ending. Joseph and Mary found their son, and their son came home with them. And as we read again, grew in favor with God and with men. Regardless of the trouble that Jesus might have got himself in, Jesus knew that his parents were going to be there for him. They knew that their parents loved him and loved him all the way to the cross. A good parent doesn't give up on a child. We experience that in Freedom's Door and Teen Challenge an awful lot, that parents have given up on their children. It's very sad to see that. Teen Challenge and Freedom's Door will never give up on somebody and keep having them come back. I'm not going to tell you the whole story of somebody else who I've been working with probably for 12 years and in and out of Freedom's Door and Teen Challenge, and finally has come back to his parents over the course of Christmas. And there are some amazing stories that happen. So we cannot give up on our children. And when we don't give up on our children and our children grow, and I've heard all kinds of stories from our congregation of how proud parents are of their children, probably more proud than anything else. And I can say myself, and I think I speak on behalf of my wife Janice, very proud of our 3 boys, fortunate to have our youngest boy here with us over the course of Christmas. Never more proud of him than when he finally got his commercial pilot's license. The middle boy, Sean, the one who was lost when he was 9 years old playing baseball, is now going to be British Columbia's, he's in line to become British Columbia's #1 person for search and rescue. He works now with the Department of Transport. He's kind of working towards being the lead drone person. He works with a drone that's worth $110,000. They have 3 of them, and he's already doing some surveying with the Department of Transport, but he's going to be moving beyond that and doing search and rescue. And then Jeff, never more proud of him than when he got accepted at